Alright, what is up everybody? So back out on the Meteor 350 today, and so I've had it for, I don't know, since last Friday, so like 5 days now. Commuted to work on it some, ridden a little back roads on it some, and just wanted to go over a few of the things that jumped out to me in the first couple 100 miles, we'll say, of ownership. So first off, right off the bat, for a single cylinder, especially one that is under square and has such a long stroke, this thing is so smooth. I mean, very surprisingly smooth. I kind of expected that, because back when these bikes came out a few years ago, I remember seeing some videos. One video in particular, they put a cup of water on the seat of, I think, a classic 350, and while it's just sitting there on the stand, rev it up, and it's trying to show how smooth it is. But at like 65, 70 going down the highway, for a single cylinder to be just this dead smooth is pretty good. It's pretty amazing. So they did a great job. I know it's counterbalanced, unlike the old 500s and 350s, but I mean, that's the point of doing it, just to smooth it out, and it's perfect. They did a fantastic job. Second positive thing that jumps out to me is the gearbox. So for those that don't follow the channel, I've got a T7 Yamaha Tenere 700 in the garage. I've had a wide assortment of deal sports. I've also had Harleys, Victories, Yamaha Cruisers, Kawasaki W800. And another thing that jumps out to me immediately with this bike is how good the transmission is. You can shift it lazily, and what I mean by that is, like, almost not push the gear lever far enough. And on a multitude of other bikes, when you do that, you'll end up with a false neutral. Not on this bike. Positive shifts, even when you don't shift it, positively, we'll say. But haven't had a false neutral yet. I've kind of lazily, tapped on the gear shifter and thought in my head, like, oh, it probably didn't even shift, or I'm going to get a false neutral. And no, it took it every time. I have adjusted the foot shifter so that I can just use the toe shifter. I'm not messing with the heel shifter at all. It's not that I'm not a huge fan, it's just they really should have put an adjustable linkage arm on this thing. That way you could fine tune it exactly how you want it. I took the the shaft off I took the arm off of the selector shaft and rotated a spline forward as far as I can go, another spline forward, and the shifter won't shift. And that makes it, in my opinion, perfect, at least for my size foot, to shift up and down with the toe and be completely happy and satisfied. So transmission is absolutely butter smooth, shifting gears. Did a fantastic job with that, to the point to where you notice it almost immediately coming from a wide array of other bikes. Next thing that I'm very happy about is tank capacity, fuel tank capacity, slash mile per gallon. Not so much the mile per gallon, although it kind of plays into it directly, we'll say. But I know these are not touring bikes meant to, cross, say, North America from coast to coast. You could do it on one. The bike's probably going to handle it fine. You, on the other hand, maybe not. But I know they're not meant for that, so you might think, fuel tank capacity and total range on a tank is not a big deal on a bike that's not really meant to do that. But if you're going to buy a cruiser like this, an inexpensive cruiser, and think, I can commute it to work, I can run errands around the house, You know, if I'm riding back roads real lazy like this, I can throw a passenger on, assuming you and your significant other are not, you know, massive people. And, you know, it'll work for all this stuff. And the commuting to work part of that is I don't want to have to stop for gas every other trip to work. And, you know, if you lived in a city or had a very short commute, you know, you could get away with not having to stop, you know, even if it had a small tank. But I've got a 66-mile round-trip commute daily to work. So if I've got to start looking for gas at 120 miles, then depending on when I filled up along my last trip back and forth to work, then I almost have to look for gas every other day. So having a 4-gallon capacity on a machine that gets, I haven't checked it myself, still working on my first tank here, so I haven't checked it myself, but you know, based off other claimed fuel mileage, it's going to be anywhere between like 60 and 80. So call it 70. 7 times 4, that's 280 mile range. You know, probably start looking for gas around like 230. So that's double, you know, what some bikes I've had in the past. You know, you start looking for gas at like 110, 120 miles. So another great feature. I'm glad it doesn't have like a little 2.6 gallon tank on it or something. Now for one thing that I strongly dislike. The sprocket ratios, in my opinion, are not right. Now, a lot of people, I've been reading, a lot of people are going up from a 15-tooth front sprocket, which is stock, to a 16. And if you do that, you're just going to find yourself using 4th gear a lot more, maybe even using 4th gear out on the highway. Now, no one makes a 14-tooth front sprocket. I don't really know why, because in my opinion, I think a 14 is going to make it perfect. And I've got a trick up my sleeve to get a 14-tooth front sprocket that'll fit this bike. I've been cross-referencing the spline size for the output shaft, and I found another bike that uses a 520 size chain and sprockets. It has a 22 millimeter by 15 tooth spline shaft, which is what this one has, and I can get it in a 14 tooth. There is a little boss on it that I'll have to put that sprocket on my lathe and face the boss off of it, most likely, for it to work on this bike, but that's up my sleeve. Not going to happen overnight. I have a buddy that owns said donor bike, and he's got a spare sprocket, so at some point in the future I'm going to borrow that from him, test fit the splines, make sure they fit and it's good and tight, and after doing that I will order a brand new 14 tooth made to fit his bike, and then machine the face down so that it'll work on this bike. But going to a 16 tooth and then just only using 5th gear when you're on flat roads with no headwind and no grade or hill to climb just doesn't seem right to me. These bikes are speed limited to 75, and it will do over 60 miles an hour in 3rd, and it will hit that 75 mark in 4th. So I just don't understand why it's geared so tall. Average riding conditions, not a problem. Steep inclines or a strong headwind, which I had yesterday on my commute home from work, was terrible. At times I was slowing down to almost 60 miles an hour on a flat stretch of road, and I had like a 20 mile an hour headwind. If I downshifted to 4th, I could speed up. So dropping a tooth on the front, it's going to lower, raise rather, at the same speed in the same gear. It's going to raise the RPMs by like 400 to 500, and I don't know. I don't have a tack on this bike, so I don't know what the I don't know what RPM I'm doing at those speeds. I don't know I'd have to look at a dyno sheet to see exactly where the peak of the power and torque curve are for this bike, but I know for sure that if I downshift I can accelerate in those conditions, and I know that I can't right now in fifth. And increasing the RPMs in fifth gear by a few hundred, 400 RPMs maybe, I don't expect to be a huge detriment to the fuel mileage. So that's my plan there. Hitchcock's does sell a 44 tooth rear sprocket, but as it sits off the showroom floor, I feel like they kind of miss the gearing just a little bit, and I definitely and have no intentions of going up and then rarely using fifth gear or just using fourth a lot more. So anyway, there's like 4 things that they knocked out of the park with this bike, and one thing I feel like they kind of missed a little bit. So I don't know. Let me know what you think in your comments. Some of this is factual. The engine is smooth. The gearbox is great. The gearing's opinions. So everyone's got an opinion, and you know what they say about opinions. So take mine for what it's worth, but that's how I feel. So anyway, we'll catch y'all on the next one.